September wrap up, I didn't read a lot. I mainly went and reread books. I went and rewatched shows this month. And then I went and I was watching some movies. I was thinking about doing a. I was contemplating doing like a movie and TV show vlog, like maybe like a movie vlog where I'm going through like different movies like on streaming and like what my thoughts are on them. I was thinking of doing that, but I don't know. I don't know if I will. Um, I don't know if I will. I might do it. Might be something I contemplate for maybe next year or something, because I don't know. Like, I'm gonna try to do at least two vlogs in next year in 2025. So I'm hoping I can kind of keep to the two vlogs, because if I don't, then I could probably just stick with one vlog, and then I could always do like a movie or a TV show vlog where I'm talking about like, stuff that I'm currently watching. But I watched like how many episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer? I watched that show back in like the late 90s into the 2000s. I used to watch that show. I watched the whole series, and it's been a while since I've rewatched it. And then I watched how many episodes of this show called Awkward. It used to be on MTV, and they have it now on Paramount Plus. And so I think it's funny. It's still funny. It's still a funny show. It's this young girl. She's like 15, which, of course, the actors look older than 15, but I'm like, I'd rather it be like adults pretending to be teenagers than teenagers pretending, to be teenagers, and it's kind of awkward. Sometimes it'd be kind of awkward because it's like, ooh, I don't want to see like two 15-year-olds making out. That's kind of creepy, It's creepy, especially when adults are watching the show. So I prefer like the actors to be at least 18, at least 18 and like pretending to be 15-year-olds, because then it's not so far of a stretch. So I've been watching the show, and it's funny though. The one character was Sadie. She's such a bitch. She's such a bitch, but she's funny, Like, I could see, like, some people rewatching the show and being offended for certain things, but I feel sorry for her in a way, because she's a character where she's plus size, even though she's rich. She's plus size, and she kind of, like, goes through, like, the struggle of every day of, like, counting her food and all that stuff, like, having a food journal, and feeling, obviously very insecure about herself. So her bully side comes out, and she bullies people. And so I'm like, that's what it is. It's the fact that she bullies others because she's deeply insecure about herself, There's usually always a reason why somebody bullies. People are not born, evil. They become that way from something. There's always something that's wrong with somebody for a reason. No one's born evil. I don't believe in that, Same thing with like, you're not born, like all white people are not racist. You're not inherently evil or racist because you're born that way. No, it don't work like that. You are taught that, at a very young age, So it's a learned trait. It's not inherited. So it's the same thing with like, people who become bullies. It's usually some reason over it. So even though her character is funny, and she's mean, she's a bitch. I'll be like, oh, she's being a bitch right now. But I felt sorry for her, like I had empathy for her character. Same thing with like the main character. Her name's Jenna, and she's very much like this awkward teenager. She accidentally falls in her bathroom, and her parents like thought she was like trying to delete herself, It's so awkward. It's such an awkward show. It's good though. It's a good show. I did like it the first time I watched it, and then now that it's on like streaming, so I can watch it on Paramount Plus, it's still good. It still holds up, Like the show started in I think like 2011. So, but I did enjoy it, And then I was watching like a couple of movies on Netflix and stuff like that. I'm trying to get through that. So I haven't done a lot of reading. Ugh. Anyways, 4 minutes later. So I ended up reading 3 new books. I reread 2 books. I had 0 DNFs, so that was good. I listened to 2 audiobooks, and I'm currently listening to another book. because I'm going to be doing a vlog. And so, let me go to my Goodreads. So the first book I read this month was Lady Ruthless. This is Notorious Ladies of London #1. I'm going to continue on with the series because I did like this book. So I'll continue on with the series. I don't know if it's a spin-off series. I'll have to go back with, her books there. It might be a spin-off series. So I gave this book 4 stars. Now, I did take my time with this one. Dang it. Sorry about that. I did take my time with this book. So, we have the characters of Lady Calliope. I think that's how you pronounce it. Calliope. It's a weird thing of like, it's like a long form of Callie. Calliope. I don't know. Someone have to. How do you pronounce it? In the comment section. And then you have Justin. He goes by Sin. So it's Justin Vaughn, Earl of Sinclair. So there's content warning for talk of self-deletion, parent with dementia, death, and a stillborn baby. So Lady Callie blames Lord Sin of her one brother's death and the death of his wife. So Callie decides to get back at him by writing a scathing story called Confessions of a Sinful Earl, stating that the story is by the Earl himself. Like, it's like he's doing almost like a confessionary, like diary kind of thing, like, oh, I'm bad, I'm the bad evil, blah blah blah, Sin. So unfortunately he wasn't hang on, where am I? Okay, the Earl loses his reputation as well as his current fiance. So the Earl finds out who wrote the story, and he decides to kidnap and tie up Lady Callie and tell her that she now needs to marry him because she ruined his reputation. It's like, oh, now you're going to marry me so you can fix my reputation. So unfortunately, he wasn't expecting to be attracted to Lady Callie, and the more times he's around her, the more he wants her. So I said, I took my time with the story, and I really enjoyed this book. The more times they're around each other, the more their walls come down. Callie was engaged to another man years ago, and he left her to another country to help heal his lungs, but unfortunately the man passed away. She still feels the heartbreak, but she doesn't like the fact that she started to feel things for Sin. Once she finds out more about how his former wife was, that his former mistress was an alibi for him, so there's no way Sin committed the crimes she accused him of, the more guilty she feels. So I said, the only thing that annoyed me was Callie's stubbornness, but once she stops being stubborn, I loved how she listened to Sin and got him to open up about his mother and his ex-wife and the horrible things she did to Sin. Yeah. Sin was, he did some debauched things, but when you look at, like, his ex-wife was a fucking nightmare. This woman was a horrible woman. Like, he went and he married her. It was a love match. And so shortly after they got married, she just completely changed. She would go and, like, take the footmen into other rooms and, like, have sex with them, or, like, give them, like, oral stimulation, and he would catch them. And I'm like, oh my God, this woman's a fucking nightmare. She was horrible to him. Would sleep around, and they had a baby, and it was stillborn, and that's heartbreaking, when you hear about that. And so she just really didn't want to be married to him anymore. I don't know if it was the effects of, like, the stillborn baby that was really, like, the catalyst of her just kind of, like, losing her shit. I don't know. She obviously was dealing with a lot of mental issues. I think she had, like, maybe some type of, like, bipolar possibly, because it looked like she went from, like, extreme highs to extreme lows, and that's usually, like, the categories of, like, bipolar disorder and things like that. So I think she probably was a bit, like, mentally ill, but she was just a horrible person. And so she ended up, like, self-deleting. That was something that he went and he had told Callie. He goes, I didn't kill my wife, she self-deleted. She killed herself. And so you end up finding out what happened with her brother and everything, and that was kind of, like, sad. And but yeah, it was very much like, I love the banter with the characters. Like, they kind of went back and forth with each other. He like basically kidnapped her and like tied her up, and he was like at his like kind of like old crumbling estate, and then he ended up taking her back over to like her estate, and then, you know, basically was like, I'm her fiance kind of thing. Like, he made it look like that he had rescued her, like she got kidnapped by someone else and he had rescued her. And then he's basically saying like, you know, that, oh, I'm, you know, I'm her fiance. And so it's like very much like bickering back and forth. And then finally, you know, she went and started to, you know, find out more of the truth, you know, of him. And then she felt guilty about like her writing the letters and all that stuff. So it was basically like, once they got married, they actually really were attracted to each other, you know, like she kept fighting it, and then he was like fighting his attraction too. But the more he was around her, you're like, he's like, he's a sweetheart. He really is a sweetheart. And like, he may have came off as very, you know, very like brutish and all that stuff, and very kind of like bullyish, but he really was very, you know, affectionate and loving. So I'm like, you know, she honestly could have ended up with someone way worse. The guy was a really nice guy, and he didn't deserve what his ex-wife had did to him. And also, like, there's a character in here, his mother, who obviously has dementia, and he goes and has a room where he has his mother in, and his mother, you know, he makes sure she's being taken care of by a nurse. The one nurse, he ends up firing her because she kind of was like not taking care of his mother very well. She very much would like, you know, there's like different medications that they would give to people. She would like kind of like indulge in the medications and all that stuff to kind of like give her a high and all that stuff. Yeah. So he ended up firing her and getting another maid who will take care of his mother. And you could see how much he loved his mother, you know, and the fact that she couldn't remember him half the time. It's a very devastating disease, you know, of how your mind kind of like is not your own anymore, and you very much like don't remember, you know, your children, your great grandchildren, your grandchildren, and all that stuff. It's sad. It's just a sad disease, you know, of like seeing this person that you grew up with, and then all of a sudden they just don't remember you anymore, you know? It's very sad to see. So I did like the book. I did really like it. It wasn't something I loved, but it was something I really enjoyed it, though. I'll just say that. I did really enjoy it. And I will continue on with the series, because it looks like there's how many books in that series. So the next book I ended up reading, and I took my time with this one too, was Cottonmouth by Naomi Lucas. I gave this one 4 stars. Now this one here very much is more darker in tone. It's a longer book too. It's a thicker book. It takes place mostly on this ship. And so it has a lot of world building in it. This is the type of book where you don't want to read this one first, because you're going to be missing a whole lot of like backstory. So you definitely have to read the first book and then work your way up to this one here. So this one here is, I believe it's the 6th book. Yeah, it's the Naga Brides, number 6. There's going to be how many other books that she's going to be doing, because there's still how many other like hybrid snakes, the Nagas, that still need to be introduced. One in here was introduced, but something happened to him. So this here was interesting. So we have Vivian and Syasku. I say Syasku. I think that's how you pronounce his name. So there's content warning for torture, forced ejaculation. Yeah. Drugged, chained up, painful experiments, and starvation. So Vivian is aboard the Dreadnought. This is the apt name for that ship, the Dreadnought. You know, it is very dreadful in there. So Vivian is aboard the Dreadnought when a snake hybrid is brought in so they can perform tests on him. Vivian is a part of the group that is asking the creature questions. Syasku manages to get free, and he bites Vivian on the neck. Shortly after that, she starts to feel things, and the more she is around this creature, the more intrigued she is, but she's also very scared of him as well. Sayescu tries to obtain a mate in the last book, the Boomslang. But before he could do that, he is captured by humans and put on a ship. And from there, he is caged up, tortured, experimented on, drugged, and in chains. He's intrigued with the human woman who asks him questions. Her scent is similar to the human woman he tried to obtain on Earth. So the more he is around Vivian, the more his pheromones start to work on Vivian, and her arousal is something that he can smell on her. So he starts to get aroused as well. So Vivian's father is Captain Volpe, and he tells Ursula, the woman experimenting on Sayescu, to give Vivian another job. So Vivian ends up getting put on a job for a month. Meanwhile, her arousal gets worse, and the only way it calms down is if she finally meets with Sayescu. But she doesn't know that at the time, that they have to mate in order for her heat to kind of go away. She steals the keycard from Ursula's secretary and gets in to see Sayescu. So Ursula decides to lock Vivian in with Sayescu, and Vivian and him mate. They call it rutting. There are some tensions below with the other human citizens that don't want to be on a ship anymore, and they want to be on Earth because they heard Earth is the planet is habitable again. So the citizens start messing with the lights and other things that help run the ship. So they run the core. Ursula takes Sayescu from his nest he created for Vivian inside his prison, his cage. And when he goes into a room, he sees a Sarah, so another Naga who Sayescu rescued years ago and took care of. Sarah deliberately got captured because he knew he couldn't survive on his own, on Earth. So he makes a deal with Ursula that he will stay and be tested and experimented on, and Sayescu would be set free. So Sayescu wants Vivian, but they try to keep him from her. He manages to escape with the help of a Sarah and kills the military commander. That military commander was a prick. When Sayescu gets to an elevator with Muffin, he's a medical researcher that was working with Ursula. He gets electrocuted by Ursula. So secretly, Muffin decides to help Sayescu recover. Sayescu got fried all over his body. He couldn't see for a time. His eyes were kind of fried. So he was blind for a little bit. So there's an area on the ship that the upper residents and workers don't go there. It takes 2 months for Sayescu to recover with the help from their medical technology and Kyle. Kyle was a character that was introduced in the last book, and he was helping out the other character, Lauren. I think it was Laura. I think it was Laura. And so meanwhile, Vivian has been trapped in the captain's residence being guarded by a nurse named Lena. So her father tells her that Sayescu is dead. That's what he says. He says he's dead. So she's pregnant with Sayescu's child at that time. And her pregnancy is progressing very quickly because of the Naga DNA. So Vivian manages to escape and asks for help from Ursula. So she helps Vivian and brings her back to her room, where Ursula and Asera have clearly been mating. They clearly have been mating. He has a nest and everything. So Vivian tries to warn Asera that Ursula isn't a good woman and she's just using him. So then all hell breaks loose, and a ship's lights go off. Fighting breaks out. Vivian goes into labor. Asera tries to help her. Finally, Sayescu shows up, and he and Ursula help Vivian deliver their child. Some deaths happen after this. I'm not going to say who dies. I don't want to give it away too much. So Vivian, Sayescu, Kyle, Muffin, and others make it on a ship and escape the dreadnought. So they all land on Earth, but after how many days they look up at the sky and see that a dreadnought ship explodes. So how many other ships arrive on Earth? So Sayescu and the other Nagas and their mates all hide underground. So I said my thoughts. I said, this installment of the series was darker in tone to the other novels. This took place mostly on the dreadnought. This was also slow-paced, and there was a couple of short time jumps where the hero and heroine aren't with each other. There are a lot of deaths in this book. Sayescu kills a lot of humans. He does. He kills a lot of them, a lot of soldiers. This is the type of series where if you don't start at the beginning, then you will be lost. There is a ton of world building in here, and I'm predicting that there is going to be a huge war on Earth between Nagas and other humans in future books. I think so. I think there's going to be a war. I really enjoyed this one. I do feel like Naomi Lucas is finding her stride in these latest installments to the series. The beginner books I wasn't a huge fan of, the romances, but the last two, Boomslang and this novel, I felt like the heroes weren't as crazy possessive and dominant as the other heroes previously. Yeah, in book 1, 2, and 3, it was a little bit like kind of like dark when it comes to relationships and all that stuff. I wasn't always a huge fan of the relationships, and I love the world building. That's what kept me going with the series, is the world building. So I do have a glossary of the things that I went and I took notes of in here, so it kind of helped me like keep track. So there's a glossary. I put lurkers. Now lurkers there's an alien race that had came to Earth, and with the lie that they wanted to help with our technology, but ultimately they ruined the planet and killed a lot of humans. So they ended up like moving, drifting off of Earth and all that stuff. There was like a big old war that took place, killed lurkers, but also they had taken off too. So Genesis 8, it's a technology in the bodies of the Nagas, the hybrid snake creatures. It alters Naga and human DNA, and why the humans on the Dreadnought want it. Like, you could see, like, Ursula was just an evil person. She was not a good person. She did, like, a forced, like, ejaculation for him, for Sayasku, and she was drinking his liquid, and it was causing humans to, like, it kind of like de-aged them in a way, and kind of like made their it's very much like men will say like they're swimmers, their spooge is like, oh, it's good for you kind of thing. That's basically what it was. It's like it was in the males, like, semen and all that stuff. It's what made humans like youthful and more able to like age slower. And that's basically what had happened with the hybrids, the snakes. The Nagas age slower. So there's something in their DNA that was from the aliens that caused, that. So they call it Genesis 8. So there's this stuff called the Yulin research. So the Yulin research, it's medical science and technology that has been used by the Yulin family for generations. Laura Yulin is the mother of Vivian and other children. In the previous book, you find out that Lauren, her reproductive eggs were stolen. She was held down, obviously knocked out, and they had obviously pulled, like they take their eggs, your eggs, reproductive eggs, they took them from her. So it caused her to go into like an early menopause because of it. And she wasn't able to like have any babies, after that. And so the guy here, who was the captain, was a prick. He went and took her eggs so he can go and use his sperm to create these children that would be his biological children, but also they were more of what they would say, biblos kind of thing. Like, obviously he had children from another woman, and those were his legitimate children. These ones here were obviously he created as a way of like having that Yulin technology. It's like a medical technology that's only through this one family. And so he wanted to have control of it. And so like the guy is a real prick. So Lauren had escaped in the last book with the boomslang, the other creature. And so when Sayasku had smelled Vivian, she smelled very familiar. It's because he was trying to go for Lauren in the last book. He ended up getting Vivian. He ended up going up in the ship and meeting Vivian. And so it was basically at the end, Vivian and Lauren were getting to know each other because that was her mother, And so I'm like, that guy was a real fucking prick. Of like, it's basically a form of like, it's like forced sterilization, in a way. It's forced sterilization because all of your eggs are getting taken from you. All your reproductive eggs are getting taken because we only have so many that our body has created, and then that's it. Once your last egg goes, you've hit menopause. You're no other. Nothing else. Where guys can keep spooging and knocking chicks up. They could be 80, 90 years old and still able to have babies. Where us women, once we reach a certain age, that's it. Lucky bastards, So that was interesting, with when it came to like the Yulin technology. And so there's the other character, Muffin. He was a man who's been working with the medical staff and has been helping Vivian. He helped Sayasku and Ursula. Ursula shocks him with the electricity, so he ended up like helping her because Muffin knew Lauren. He knew Laura. And so he basically wanted to help them because he liked Laura. He wanted to make sure she was, safe. But he also saw the stuff that they were doing, to these like hybrids. He didn't like it. He obviously didn't like it, didn't like the way, they were doing it. And he wanted to kind of like set them free. And so he had left the ship so that way he could be on Earth. And Kyle was, from the previous book, he had helped Lauren escape. And he was a part of the military. He ended up getting like basically demoted, I think. And so he had quit his job in the military and was just kind of like hanging out on the ship and all that stuff, doing like other things. So he ends up helping them too. So I'm assuming there might be a case when I'm thinking there might be a case when maybe some of the female Nagas, because they ended up leaving the male Nagas because a lot of them would end up dying in childbirth. So I'm thinking maybe some of the female Nagas could end up like scenting the human mates, the male mates, and maybe they would want to mate with the males. Like maybe when you go and combine like humans with the, Nagas, it's like an easier thing, easier birth, So I'm thinking maybe that could happen. She might do that. Naomi Lucas might do that with the series. So they have the Sovereign. So it's people who basically run the universe and the captain's superiors. So you have like the Sovereign like heading, in their direction because they obviously wanted to question the captain and all that stuff. And so I'm assuming the Sovereign, they might cause problems on Earth, with the other Nagas and their mates and all that stuff. And then you got the Kets, which I don't know if they're humans or if they're aliens. I'm kind of confused. They might be humans, but they really don't like the Sovereign or anybody attached to the Sovereign. So that's why I said I think there might be like a war coming on. Either it's going to be a space war or it's going to land on Earth and it's going to cause like a whole bunch of stuff, So Amari, she's a character that ended up being in the core. She was like the one who was running. She was like the leader of the humans down there. And so she ended up getting how many of them off, and she's now on Earth. So there might be a romance with Amari and one of the Naga males possible. But I would like to see some of the Naga females, some of the hybrid snake females. I would really like to see that because they're not dead, obviously. There are some that survived, but they stayed away from the males because every time they would mate with the males, a lot of them would end up dying in childbirth. So they didn't want to keep dying, of course. So I'm like, well, maybe if they mated with the human males, maybe that wouldn't happen. There's a possibility that might not happen. And that'd be interesting to see like the characters drawn for like the female Nagas. That would be interesting. I would love to see that. But it's a very interesting series. Like the more like I read them, the more in depth you go to like all of this world building that's happening. And it's a very interesting story. They're very interesting. I really like every one of them. They've kind of gotten better for me. Like the first 3, I kind of gave them more of like a 3. I thought they were decent. I love the world building, but like I said, I wasn't really a big fan of when it came to like the romances. But I definitely think like Naomi Lucas is getting better with her books. Like the relationships with the snakes and the humans, I think are getting better. Like she's doing it in a way to where they don't sound as like possessive as they did before. Like especially when it came to the Viper, the Cobra, I can't remember what the other one was called, the third one. But this one here was Cottonmouth. And so, yeah, it is interesting. I'll just say that. It's an interesting series. I'm definitely looking forward to, like, the other ones in the series, you know? Definitely looking forward to that. And I went and like I said, I had went and I had started to reread some books. So I ended up rereading Last Light. I ended up buying the hardcovers for these because I had paperbacks, but I decided I want to buy the hardcovers. I like the hardcovers better. Just the way, you know, because they don't have like the other ones, because it's a dark background, they kind of collect like fingerprints and all that stuff, and I don't like that. So at least with these, it's like they're hardcover, it's a little bit better. They hold up a little bit better too. So I'm going to start doing that. Like if I see a book that is like, it's printed, it doesn't have like a dust jacket, I don't want dust jackets. And it has like this type of like thing where it's all like imprinted onto the hardcover. I prefer that. I think they look better. So I end up rereading Last Light, and I still enjoy it. I still enjoy this story. I still say this one here is like the prequel of the series that starts out with, you know, this couple here. That a lot of people say like it gives off like what was his name? Daryl Dixon and what was the other character? What was the other character? The blonde chick. I can't remember her name. But Daryl Dixon and the female from The Walking Dead. I hated when they killed off her character. I was like, you motherfuckers. I was so mad when they killed off her character. So mad. I was mad when they killed off Glenn. I know they killed him off in the comics, okay? I know they did, but they could have changed it. Daryl Dixon was never in the comics. You're telling me that they couldn't have just changed it because Glenn was a fucking fan favorite, okay? So I was just mad. And I stopped watching that show after a certain point because I was like, fuck you. So this here definitely gives off kind of like Daryl Dixon vibes, and like I said, I can't remember her name. But this one here, it's like we've got Travis and Lane. And Lane, I really like. She's a favorite character of mine because she was very self-sufficient. She wanted to go out and do it her own, do it herself, and not have to, you know, ask other people for help constantly. So she basically deals with the death of her grandmother, and so after her grandmother dies, Travis, he leaves around the same time as her because he had a daughter and his daughter died. So you basically had like this asteroid that hit the Earth, mainly in Europe, but it caused this like sickness to break out, and it killed a lot of people. And so the sickness ended up killing his daughter, ended up killing her grandmother. And so Lane sets out to try to find like the other people who had left the town. I think they were going to like Fort Knox or something like that. And so while she's traveling, she runs into Travis again, and she hadn't seen him since like, you know, for a while, but she knew like he was a mechanic in the town and all that stuff. But, you know, when shit happens, shit hits the fan, desperate times calls for desperate measures. So she wasn't sure if she could really trust him, you know? And so he's basically like, I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to like make sure you're okay and that you're not going to get attacked by, you know, there was this roving gangs of like the ones they called wolves. They called them wolves and all that stuff, like this wolf pack. And so they would go and like sexually assault and murder and do all the bad stuff. And so it was basically them two getting to know each other and trusting each other and things like that. And it was good. It was still good. It's still good. It's still a good story. I had to go and put in my little highlights and all that stuff. I put my little tabs in. That's my way of like annotating, you know, annotating. I don't annotate. Annotate. It's such a weird word. I don't annotate with writing stuff in the book because I never know if I'm going to keep this book forever. You know, in 10 years, I may decide I want to get rid of it. So I don't want to put notes in it. You know, I don't want to mark it up. I could just put the tabs in because with the tabs, it's not a big deal. Like they're so light, you could just peel them out and it won't ruin the book. So I put my little tabs in. and I reread this. I still enjoy it. Still enjoy the book, and I like this cover a little bit better, you know. It adds a little bit more more of like the theme to it, where it's like it's such a dark time. It's such a dark time in here, but there's that sliver of hope. That's what I like about this book so much. It's that it's sliver of hope that everything is going to be okay, you know? And that's why I'm like, I like the background of this, because you could see like the sun coming up, and even though like everything kind of looks cold and frozen, you know, like eventually these flowers are going to bloom. That's basically what I see kind of like with this one here. So I think the cover really kind of fits for the story. So yeah, this one here, I still like it. It's still a favorite of mine. And that's why I was like, I'm getting the hardcovers of it. And then I went into Haven. I will say, like, I don't like Haven as much as I liked it the first time around. I still enjoy it. But they're doing, like, I will say, like, this one here very much is like a lot of like helping others. A lot of it is helping others, and these two basically kind of like for a while denying that they had any feelings for each other, because you're talking like this is a farm that the daughter, what's her name again? I always forget. What's her name again? I always forget what her fucking name is. I always forget what her name is. But with her, oh God, I can't remember. Faith, that's what it is. Faith, her parents owned this like self-sustaining farm, you know, like it had a lot of different stuff on it to, you know, kind of made it where you could survive pretty much like, you know, on the farm and all that stuff. You didn't need like a lot of outside sources. And so Jackson was living on this farm because he was like a troubled youth. And then all of a sudden, the asteroid hit, and so it caused them to kind of like shelter in place and like learn to sustain on this farm. And her parents ended up dying. And so it's basically like her and Jackson being like, basically like the ones who were running the farm, and then they took in some people and all that stuff. So it's very much like a community in here. So you got like multiple people and all that stuff. So with me, it's like, I would say I didn't like this as much because you're dealing with a lot more of community and dealing with all these other people. And I really wanted to see more of the romance with this. So I felt like the romance kind of took more of a backseat in this, but I still enjoyed it. Like there's still parts in here that I enjoy. So I decided to annotate, and I try to do different colors for like every book. So I'd say this one here was still decent. It's still good. I still enjoy it, but there's other ones I like better, you know? So like I said, Last Light I still enjoy. And Haven, it's still enjoyable. Right now I'm kind of like in the middle of like rereading this one. Because I bought the books, so I now want to annotate. So I have like all my little marks in here. And that's basically how I annotate. You know, I don't go and mark in it. Some people do mark in their books, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. But for me, I don't do that. And I got a bookmark. I got a bookmark. I think it's funny. So I'm in the middle of this one, and that's what I'm doing right now for that reread. So the last book I ended up reading this month, it was okay. You know, so I ended up reading When She's Handy. It's a Rizdaverse short story. I do like the Rizdaverse universe a lot. Besides like Ruby Dixon and her Ice Planet Barbarian series, and then you got the Ice Home series, I'd say the other series I really enjoy is the Rizdaverse. You know, I do enjoy that. I don't like her Draconian series. I couldn't continue with those ones. They're too dark for me. I'm not into them. And then her new series, I'm not really a fan of. So I'm not sure if I want to continue on with that new series. But this one here I like. And I will say, like, Ristaverse, for the most part, most of them are hits for me. Every now and again, there's one that just doesn't work for me. This one here, I gave it like a 3.5. It was okay. I do feel like it kind of went a little too quickly for my taste. So we've got the character of Melody. And Melody's been on the Rista 3 planet for like about 5 years now. So there's talk of like past physical abuse and trauma in here. So Brooks is on the Rizla 3 planet after dropping Melody off with the king 5 years ago. And when he left Melody, she was a bruised and bony woman he bought from a mean Masaka who treated her like a dog. He had a collar around her and like would drag her around, would beat her. Horrible human being. Or let's say, not human. Horrible alien. And that man used to beat her. So Brooks sees her again, and she's smiling up at him on an area he and his men are fixing up. They're basically fixing up, like, there's many times, like, workers have to come down, and they have, like, a work permit that they have to show to, like, the custodians, like they're basically, like the police of that area. And they have to show that they have a work permit of the reason why they're there. Otherwise, they can get kicked off the planet because they're there to protect the women. Because all of these women have basically been, had been kidnapped from Earth, mistreated, sexually assaulted, beaten. I mean, whatever things happen to them, it's made a lot of them very skittish around other alien beings. So the custodians are there, and they're there to help protect the women and make sure that there's other alien species that are not there to kind of like take over the women's farms and all that stuff, because they all have farms. So Melody, when she came there, she didn't want a farm. She does, like, I don't know how to handle, like, she's like, I don't know how to handle being in a farm and all that stuff. So she decided she wanted to go and work with scrap, scrap metal and stuff like that, and make things. She's very much creative. And so she ended up building bikes. She ended up building like toasters for like the other humans and stuff like that. She's very creative. So she ends up seeing like Brooks come down again. She's like so happy to see him because he had saved her. She was with that man, that Masak older gentleman, and he treated her like shit, like dog shit, treated her very badly. And so when Brooks saw her being like mistreated, he could have walked away, but he decided to take like his money that he had and give it to this Masak and say, I'm taking her, and so he rescued her. And for her, she felt so grateful that she basically seduced him like that night and like, had sex with him. And so he 5 years later feels really guilty about it. He feels like he took advantage of her. And she's pretty much like, no, you didn't take advantage of me. I wanted to. She goes, it was consensual. I wanted to, be with you, and so she still wants to be with him. She still, has, like developed these feelings for him because of because of him saving her. And so she, wants to kind of like be with him sexually. And he's like first kind of like denying it, saying no. And then he's like, okay, I want to be with you, but I want to get to know you. I don't want you to just sleep with me because you're grateful I saved you. He goes, I want you to, obviously have more feelings for me, which I can understand, where he was coming from. So it was basically them kind of like getting to know each other, getting to know what they like, what they don't like. He's actually allergic to some kind of like seasoning or something like that in the noodles. And so she accidentally kisses him because she was eating like some kind of like dried mushrooms, and it had that seasoning in it, and it ended up like swelling him up. Like his face ended up swelling and all this stuff. And he very much like looks down on himself because besides him being like part Masaka, whatever it is, he's also part of this other thing, which is like basically like a splice. So they kind of think of it as lesser. So he has had a hard time finding a mate because they would look down on him, on his family lineage and all that stuff, and very much like him being like mixed with something. So they look down on it. And so she's looking at him like, I don't care what you are. I don't care if like, I don't care if you were mixed with some other breed. I don't care if you don't have family lineage. She goes, I just care about you. So like I thought that part was sweet. He very much like had a lot of like self-esteem issues and didn't want her to like feel sorry for him. So yeah, it was okay. It could have been better. There's other ones that I've read that, from her that I thought were way better. It was, like I said, 3.5. It was fine. But I did feel like there was like some things kind of missing from it a little bit. I don't know if maybe like it needed more time or what, because I know like she has like a lot of things that she's doing. Like she kind of gets through books like fairly quickly, like writing them and stuff like that. And sometimes I think she needs maybe like a little more time with them. Maybe like don't post so quickly. It's like you don't need to go and post like 2 or 3 times a year. You could post like once a year. That's fine. I feel like if she took more time with her books, then more of them would be better, in my opinion. I just, maybe she's listening to other people, but I think like you don't need to go that fast with like posting a book. And I do like the Ristaverse series. I really do like those books, but I just feel like she's kind of like writing a little too quickly. But yeah, that's all I've read so far for new books is those, and I'm gonna continue on with reading through this one here to get through that one. I don't count my rereads. I know other people do. I think it depends on like how you feel. How you feel. I don't count it. I only count new books I read. But it all depends on you. If you want to count your rereads, do it. Who cares? I mean, honestly, I don't understand why people want to, like, I don't know, like, come up with this stuff of like, oh, well, you shouldn't count your rereads. It's like, who cares? Honestly, the amount of things that people will worry about on this, like in this community, and I'm like, really? That's a concern? Who cares? Who cares? So to me, it doesn't matter whether you want to reread or not. I don't count my rereads. That's just me. You do whatever you want, for yourself, but yeah, I'm going to be doing some more paranormal books in October. I want to really kind of get through like how many of them, as much as I can, and go from there. Same thing for November and December. I had put it in my community tab that I really wanted to do like October, November, December be more like paranormal books, or possibly fantasy, maybe some fantasy, but just like something other than like contemporary. I might do some historicals, but I definitely want to stick with a lot of like, I have a lot of paranormal, like I have a lot of like Kresley Cole. Is it Kresley Cole? Yeah, Kresley Cole. A lot of Kresley Cole. They have that Immortals After Dark series. Everybody fucking talks about that series. So I want to get through how many books in like October, November, December, around there with those books. Also Patricia Briggs. I want to get into that, the Mercy Thompson series. I want to get into those books and go from there. And listen to like a good amount of audiobooks for like October, November. I'm trying to finish off the Sookie Stackhouse series. Right now I'm kind of like, I think like some authors I think just go a little bit too long with some of their series. It's like it doesn't need to be that long, like some series just don't need to be that long. Some of them I do feel like they get kind of like boring, in certain parts, like I do feel like Sookie Stackhouse, that series, has some of the books that have kind of gotten boring, where I'm like, come on, let's kind of finish this up, wrap it up, kind of thing. So I kind of feel like that with the Sookie Stackhouse series. I do enjoy the books still, but I kind of feel like she could have wrapped it up like quicker. Instead of it being like 13 books, why not just 10, So yeah. So I'm going to finish off the Sookie Stackhouse series, get into the Immortals After Dark series and see how much I like that one. Get into that Mercy Thompson series. I also have Teresa Medeiros. There's like a couple of books I have from Teresa Medeiros that are like vampire books. I want to try to get through those in like October, even if I have to read them, like physically read them, get through them, because I do have physical versions of those. I want to get through those, from there, and go from there. But yeah, that's it for this one here. A lot of stuff I want to do for like the month of October, November, December. So I want to kind of like do that and go from there. And then in January, I'll start back up on my Joanna Lindsay and kind of get through that one series, the Mallory Anderson series, get through that, and then get into other stuff and go from there and see what happens. But I definitely want to get through more of my physical books I have, because if I lessen my load a little bit, I can buy more books. So that's the way I think about it. Lessen my load, I can buy more books, and I have my room for new books. So there you go. But that's it for this video here. Have yourselves a good day. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to each other, and I'll see you all on the next video. All right, bye.